Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. On this week's program, we visit with K-State's LaVell Winsor with the Kansas Farm Management Association about good record keeping on the farm and ranch and maybe some things to keep in mind. We'll also have features from Kansas Corn, Kansas Wheat, and the Kansas Farm Bureau, and the weekly update from the Kansas Livestock Association and market information from Pinion. Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com. In agriculture news, the Federal Reserve finding it harder to cool the economy than almost anyone expected. Most concerns of the U.S. economy are performing very well, considering the Fed has been aggressively raising rates for 7 months. Manufacturing continues to expand, consumer spending remaining strong, labor market still extremely tight, so the Q3 GDP data will probably show solid growth. Now, while the rate of increases have done little to cool spending and tamp down inflation, critics are increasing their calls for the Fed to stop raising rates. The argument is that further monetary tightening will have catastrophic effects on the U.S. and global economies, and that the inflation is about to fall precipitously. And according to a new quarterly report out from CoBank's Knowledge Exchange, the Fed does not see it that way, nor should it, and there are signs of slowing, which are the first cracks to form monetary tightening. Consumer credit's on the rise while saving rates are falling. Wage growth falling even as inflation remains high, reducing consumers' purchasing power. Now, the energy and agri-food sectors gaining unexpected levels of pricing power as supply shortages now appear to be the medium-term challenge. Risk and uncertainty remains exceptionally high, but elevated commodity prices are also offering some opportunities. Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack announcing distressed farmers with qualifying USDA farm loans have already received nearly $800 million in assistance from the Inflation Reduction Act. The $3.1 billion in assistance for distressed farm loan borrowers stems from a section in that IRA. The legislation directs USDA to expedite assistance to distressed borrowers to direct or guaranteed loans administered by the Farm Service Agency. Those operations are facing financial risk. Vilsack said the group will help those in some challenging positions. Now, the goal is to keep some folks farming and remove obstacles and then improve how USDA approaches borrowing and servicing of those loans. Over 13,000 borrowers have already benefited from the resource provided under that Inflation Reduction Act, according to USDA. And online grocery buyers spending more but buying less, according to a new report showing digital sales improved in the third quarter, albeit lower than last year. The report shows 13.7% of all grocery sales in 2022 are digital. That's worth $87 billion. More coming up on the Kansas Ag Report.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers, farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and Liberty Link that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com. And we're joined now by LaVell Winsor, who is a farm analyst with the Kansas Farm Management Association. LaVell, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me here today.
Been a while since you and I have talked, and lots has changed in production agriculture, but we want to kind of start about the things that you do and the KFMA. Most folks are familiar with that, so give us maybe that broad overview.
Sure. So we have the Kansas Farm Management Association, and the Kansas Farm Management Association is kind of like stepbrothers to the role that I serve. So in Kansas Farm Management, producers are going to work all year round with their economists. And then in my role as a farm analyst, I'm oftentimes brought in as a one-time situation. Maybe they're dealing with a lender issue, maybe they're looking at farm succession, or maybe a growth opportunity, and they want to kind of see how that'll impact their operation. Although we do have some folks who do annual visits as well, where they just kind of like it as a checkup and update all of their records at one time, and just not from the tax planning like farm management does, but more so from balance sheet, budgets, and accrual cash flow.
And many folks are familiar. We'll show this as kind of our little prop, and they're broken down by areas. And so this is the smaller one. This is north central Kansas, but there's a lot of data, and those that participate in it. And your role is a bit different, but that's something that, those that participate have a good look not only at your farm, but maybe neighbor farms or the area of how compare, and are some things missing or are some not. But boy, where we are with this ag economy, things like this are so critical. To know your cost of production, know your cost of sales, to know all that, and to know if you're really making it.
Yes, yeah. And one thing, as you mentioned here with the Kansas Farm Management in the booklets, to benchmark against similar types of farms, that's just hugely valuable. But you're right, we are in a very different environment right now. High risks, things are moving, inputs and prices as well. And that is just, I think, going to continue to be a really high key, at least this next year anyways as well.
So because of that, can you overanalyze, though, because of, say, the fluctuation in some inputs, the fluctuation in fuel prices, or different things? Can you get yourself in knots by doing it too often? Say, instead of maybe doing it quarterly, if you try to do it or almost every week or transaction, that might be just almost overload, wouldn't it be?
That's a great question. I mean, we're in businesses as farms, and businesses do look at those things very regularly, especially in a high moving environment. The practical nature, many farms probably aren't going to be able to look at it on a weekly basis. But, in the old days, we were happy when people looked at it once a year.
Sure.
I think we certainly need to be doing it much more frequently than that. Just think about diesel or fertilizer prices and how fast they have moved in the last 6 to 12 months.
LaVell Winsor is joining us. She's a analyst with the Kansas Farm Management Association. We're going to take a break, and there's more to talk about. We'll do that in just a moment. Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
And LaVell Winsor is joining us. She is an analyst with the Kansas Farm Management Association and really looking at the books, analyzing costs and even the income. You can't, you have to have that income as well when you look at that. So are some things sticking out to you because of where we're seeing these really wild inputs and even some of the sales of our commodities? They have not been steady as maybe some would like.
Yeah, I've been in the ag industry for 25 years, and I honestly think that this has been, the 2022 year has been the highest risk year that I can remember in my career anyways. And knowing that cost of production and not just looking at it once, because the projections that we made last fall, the projections we made in January, they're all different now because of the supply chain issues and those costs that are there. So that risk management is really key. One thing that we did this last winter is we had a statewide meeting for risk management, particularly focusing on the cost of production and then commodity markets as well, and looking at marketing. And that was well received. That is now an online course that families can take, whether that's younger generation, older generation, or the whole family together. And that is available to anybody to take. They can find that at the agmanager.info website.
Sure. Okay. Well, that is, you can probably almost kind of pace yourself as well, because I would think a lot of times these conferences, I have to take a lot of notes or go back and review it, either the handouts or that. And because they may also trigger some other questions too if you do it as a family or a multi-generational family operation. So are there some things to look out for? I mean, that you're kind of seeing either some trends, or as we look at, winding up this year into next, to really pay key attention to?
I think that we're going to do a 1-2 where last year was high risk. And I really nobody's crystal ball is perfect by any means, but I really think we're going to have a fairly high risk environment again next year. But maybe even a little more challenging because of some of the pieces that we don't have available to us we've got some higher interest rates that are going to be there. Maybe not quite as many opportunities to lock in fertilizer as low as we did this past year. So I think it might be even more challenging than what it was for the 2022 year. Okay.
And these books are now out
Yes.
for all the different regions of the state.
Yes.
You go to your county office, pick them up.
Yes, you can do it at the county office or find them. I think you can maybe find them online as well.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We'll have to find out for sure.
Yeah.
But again, agmanager.info for all these type of things. So, all right, LaVell, we appreciate the update on what's going on. And again, it's all about knowing your cost of production.
Yes, I think that's very key in the environment we're in right now.
Okay. LaVell Winsor, who is an analyst with the Kansas Farm Management Association, has joined us. We'll have more coming up in just a moment.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
Mental health is really important to me. Not only have I struggled myself, but I've watched other farmers struggle. I saw my grandfather struggle from time to time, and we're out here for hours on end by ourselves, and it just lets our mind race, about what if, what about that, the sacrifices that we're making. My kids aren't seeing me, my wife's not seeing me, what am I missing out at home? And there's a lot of things that we can't control that we think we can control. I credit my wife a lot for me going and seeking help. I respect all the women in her shoes that do what she does on a daily basis. I think I've become a stronger person by talking about it, and I hope that my story helps other farmers talk about their struggles and feel like it's okay to talk about it, because it's one of those things that if we don't talk about it, nobody knows that we're struggling, and the struggle is real.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and Liberty Link that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
Persistent drought after harvest and delayed planting could indicate a lower risk of wheat streak mosaic virus this year. Still, experts caution producers to continue monitoring and managing volunteer wheat as they plant this fall. Right now, we're thinking there's a slightly lower risk of wheat streak heading into the fall planting. This is largely due to extended drought that has limited the emergence of volunteer, especially out west, said Kelsey Anderson-Onifree, K-State Wheat and Forage Extension Specialist. But the caveat is that there are other hosts for curl mites out there in the landscape. Those mites can find a way and they can surprise us. In 2021, wheat streak mosaic virus was the third most significant disease to strike the Kansas wheat crop loss, according to Kansas Cooperative Plant Disease Survey report released in December 2021. Statewide, the estimated yield loss was 3.1%, equivalent to 11.6 million bushels. Anderson-Onifree warns growers not to be complacent in controlling volunteer wheat. Even in areas that did not have volunteer wheat emerged immediately after harvest, several other grassy species can play a host to wheat curl mites. Bermuda grass, barnyard grass, green foxtail, downy brome, rye brome, just to name a few. Her first suggestion is to make sure to destroy the remaining volunteer ahead of planting wheat or entering a fallow period. Another suggestion for high-risk fields is to plant wheat streak mosaic virus-resistant varieties like KS Dallas or Plains Gold Guardian. Managing for wheat streak mosaic virus doesn't stop at planting. Producers should monitor for wheat streak mosaic virus throughout the growing season. Learn more about how to stop the streak of the wheat streak mosaic virus, even in a drought year, at kansaswheat.com/wheatstreak.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
I'm Debbie Lyons-Blythe, and I'm a cattle rancher in the Flint Hills of Kansas. And I'm really proud to be a rancher because cows are actually a superhero. They have an amazing power to eat things that we cannot eat and turn them into a delicious, nutritious source of protein. We call that upcycling. Not only can they eat grass, but they can eat other things as well. It's really important, though, that because cows need grass, we need to make sure that we manage the grass in the appropriate way. I live in the Flint Hills of Kansas, and grassland management is really foundational here. But it's different. You don't raise grass in the same way in Wyoming versus Alabama. So the recommendation is that we have a grazing management plan that's appropriate to our own regions. If you have a grazing management plan, you are impacting the quality of the land, water, and greenhouse gases. So you might ask, how does that impact greenhouse gases? Grasslands sequester carbon at a tremendous rate. And how do we make sure that we continue to sequester carbon? We continue to keep this land in grass, and cows help us do that. If we did not have cows grazing this area, it would grow up into a scrubby forest. And the trees that would grow up here do not sequester carbon. These grasses reach deep down into the soil, sometimes 20 feet deep, to put that carbon in really deep. In addition, the roots of the grasses help the soil to be able to infiltrate water when it rains. In addition, because photosynthesis is the foundation of grasslands, cows grazing the grass continues and encourages more photosynthesis. So if they eat the grass down, it regrows and sequesters more carbon. The carbon cycle of a cow is interesting. So cows do emit methane. They do. They burp methane, and that goes into the atmosphere and is within 10 years converted to CO2. That CO2 then is necessary for photosynthesis for the grass. The grass regrows, the cows eat it, and that cycle happens. For the most part, the carbon that is within that cycle is absolutely recycled and is not new carbon adding to the atmosphere.
To learn more about sustainability on the farm, visit KansasLivingMagazine.com.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
The National Cattlemen's Beef Association called on the Environmental Protection Agency to pause their Waters of the U.S. rulemaking following recent Supreme Court oral arguments in the case Sackett v. EPA, which will determine the agency's authority to regulate bodies of water under the Clean Water Act. According to NCBA Natural Resources Executive Director Caitlin Glover, the oral arguments highlighted the need for the Supreme Court to put this issue to bed once and for all. Since the passage of the Clean Water Act, cattle producers have experienced the regulatory whiplash of shifting waters of the U.S. definition with a change every 3.8 years on average. She said NCBA is hopeful the court will support their argument for a clear and limited waters of the U.S. definition, but in the meantime, they're calling on the agency to suspend their rulemaking until the outcome of the case is clear. The organization has been involved in every step of the rulemaking process. Last April, NCBA filed an amicus brief before the Supreme Court calling for a new test for determining whether a water feature fell under the jurisdiction of the Clean Water Act. Their argument would allow the government to protect substantial bodies of water while preventing overreach on small, isolated agricultural water features. Comments also were filed by NCBA on the Biden administration's proposed rule of waters of the U.S.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
Good morning. This is Jake McCall with Pinion Ag. The grain complex has seen a weak start to the week, grappling with demand issues and harvest pressure. Historically low levels on the Mississippi River have led to a scramble for extra storage, leaving barges unable to carry out normal levels of traffic, and have put a damper on U.S. export abilities for the near future. Along with this, the dollar continues to trade near 20-year highs, which makes it difficult for U.S. exporters to compete on a global market. Overall, we continue to see an upward trend line for corn, beans, and wheat. However, as they say, bull markets need to be fed, and we're going to need to see some new news to continue on that path. On the livestock side, feeders and live cattle continue steady to higher, as we see cash prices for fats increasing over the past few weeks, along with solid slaughter rates keeping inventory current. Live cattle futures have also been aided by a largely resilient, if volatile, stock market. Crude has pulled off its most recent peak as recession fears loom. China has refused to release several key data points, raising questions about their economy. And the Biden administration is reportedly continuing the release of oil from the strategic reserves. If you have any questions, feel free to call us at 888-452-8751. I'm Jake McCall with Pinion Ag, and I hope you have a great, productive day.
That's our show this week. Be social with us, KansasAgReport.net, or our social media channels. I'm Ken Rogers. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and LibertyLink that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
Imagine turning soybean oil, used cooking oils, and waste animal fats into fuel so amazing it drives U.S. jobs and our economy forward. Learn more about biodiesel at americasadvancedbiofuel.com.